Young fella, we appreciate you doing this interview with us.
Yes, sir.
For the sake of those watching the interview, could you tell us your name, please?
Jonathan Montgomery.
Johnson. Johnson, how long have you been in Gaston County?
Roughly for about 3 years now, since the beginning of the pandemic, roughly. I left for about a year to go up to Shelby to work. And then things kind of just didn't work out there. Came back to Gastonia because this is pretty much the only well of, resources that I could get outside of Charlotte. So,
Where are you from? Where were you born?
originally from Charlotte. I grew up in Charlotte with my mom and dad, and essentially my mom and dad, unfortunately, both got disabled when I was younger. And I was an only child, so I had to kind of care for them by myself, which led to a lot of mental issues and things that would happen later. My mother and father were always at each other's throats because of the disabilities and poverty and everything else. They were constantly fighting. They never laid hands on each other, but they might as well have. And they stayed together for, I guess, obligation or something. I was kind of trapped in the middle of that. My childhood was struggle, basically. I didn't have any security, any stability. My dad, my mom had to go to work when I was younger, so I spent the first 2 years of my life with my grandparents. So until they could get stable to, do whatever. But other than that, it was as normal as it could be, I guess. And we switched around through Charlotte, Belmont, and then, ended up here for the most part, or just in Mount Holly, Belmont area. And I lived there, and then just basically, growing up, it was just struggle. And fortunately, when I was a kid, I went to a predominantly black school in Charlotte, which was really kind of rife with gangs and stuff like that. So I kind of learned a lot about diversity then, basically not judging a book by its cover, stuff like that. And that, jerks are jerks in all colors, shapes, and sizes, really. You can't put that on race or anything else, So I was fortunate. You learn tricks to take care of yourself. And being that I'm not addicted, thank God, to fentanyl or the thing that is, which, is the most dangerous drug to ever hit America as far as I'm concerned. I'm clean and sober, and I'm not doing anything right now, so that helps a lot. A lot of what you see as far as, in my humble opinion, the dirt, the filth, everything is between mental disorder and drug addiction, and it takes over everything. Like whenever you get on that stuff, like yesterday, a young man or a friend of mine, Thais, he got tased out here in the parking lot by the cops because he's mentally unwell. But yeah, I mean, if you're not on drugs or anything like that, you can kind of keep it together enough to blend in, or at least not be unhinged out here or look completely filthy, just the simple things, going back to when it was like, just you in your room by yourself playing with toys. When you get older, I'm 41 now. When you get older, you start to look back on those little things, and they really become a treasure because you lose peace over time. You lose imagination. You lose everything. And you look back at those moments where it's like, before bills, before money, before obligations, before
Adulthood.
stress, before everything that just takes that away from you. I had it, and life, seeing pain and struggle and hatred and death and all this stuff. I was just a kid playing in my room. And even my mom and dad's mess couldn't deter me from enjoyment. And that's all I had was comic books. So that's why I'm an artist now, that's all I had was my art to escape from this world,
Your mom and dad are still alive?
No, sir. They died when I was younger.
If you don't mind me asking, what was your mom and daddy's disability or whatever?
My mother had cancer once, and she got past that, and then she got into a very severe car accident, a head-on collision at like 80 miles per hour going to work one morning. And that pretty much put her out of commission. And then she had a relapse later on and passed away. My father was a diabetic. He was a trucker. He stepped off of a gate when he was working one day and hurt his foot. And he didn't even know he was diabetic. And about a month or two later, his foot swelled up to the size of a football. It was gangrene. And then he went to the doctor and come to find out he had diabetes. And then the doctor did malpractice on him and didn't tell him his foot was infected for months or he needed penicillin or anything. Didn't give him any rounds of treatments of antibiotics, and he lost his leg. And then after that, he wasn't the same man. When my mom died, I kind of had friends who were, they could easily get a hold of marijuana, alcohol, and to cope, they thought they were helping me at the time. They kind of brought it around on a constant basis. The next thing you know, you're doing it every day. So once I stopped for a couple of days, I realized, man, I really want a beer. And that's when I knew I might have the tendency, and I was aware enough at the time to be like, I need to cut this off, man. Like, that scared me because I was like fiending for a beer, and I'm like, no. And, I dabbled in drugs my whole life, but nothing ever like super hardcore, just weed, alcohol. That's about it.
How'd you wind up in the street?
Well, about 3 years ago at the start of the pandemic, I was living with a friend of mine in Mount Holly. I was working at the grocery store there, the food line, and everything was going decent. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and that kind of unduly put stress on him or something. I don't know. Maybe he was trying to protect his bread ticket, his meal ticket with his wife or his girlfriend. They just had a baby. Right when the pandemic hit, she basically had her child. And that forced, I guess, a lot of stress on him or something. I don't know. But somebody who grew up and was like a brother to me decided to turn his back on me and kick me out in the street. And I had to survive. So I ended up coming up to Gastonia, to the Salvation Army, losing the job. And then for the last 3 years, it's kind of been off and on in chaos as far as stability. I've been trying to get a route, but unfortunately in my life, I guess it's either bad luck or good luck or whatever you want to call it. Cost of living's going up, stuff like that. And recently I've gotten in the street by basically choice. I was working at Bel Air Healthcare Center in a retirement community. I got COVID like a week before I quit. And my coworker had some issue. We had some things, some words, not really violent or anything. She was a female, older black female. We had basically an exchange where they weren't agreeing with my rate of pay or some crap they were pulling. I thought it was over with. I ended up getting COVID, getting out of work for roughly a week, and that was unpaid. They had no sick pay, no compensation for me, no nothing. God forbid, if I was sick for 2 weeks, I wouldn't have got a paycheck, man. So that kind of was pressurizing. When I came back, the first day I came back, this woman I work with decided to bring this issue back up and put pressure on me. And I snapped. I was like, I can't do this. I'm 41 years old, man. Like, there's things I've been putting off my entire life for a job out here, an income. You understand? My passions, my love. People say I'm a decent artist. Why can't I make money at that? Why am I working for corporations that don't give a damn about me, paying me not enough money to survive? And looking at the cost of living out here, man, I don't know what we're going to do as a nation, to be honest with you, because these renters are charging $800, $900, $1,400 a month for nothing. And you cannot make enough money. So I broke, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go back out on the streets because in a way, I'm not Christian, but I do believe in light and darkness. I'm more or less like Buddhist. And I follow my instinct, my heart, to guide me down the river of life. And it told me this is where you need to be, because there was also issues going on with just the community as far as fentanyl abuse, people dying out here. I have a lot of friends out here that I've met in the last 3 years. They're almost like family to me. And it was just a calling to come back out here because something told me this is the path I needed to take. And so far, things have been falling into place to bring me to a better life, I hope. Because I'm tired of just working in a damn job that don't care about us, that doesn't care about me. I get no insurance, I get no compensation, I get no sick pay, I get nothing. And it's like, what is enough money anymore, man? Like, I can't explain it. It's crazy, it's madness. And I think it's going to get a lot worse in America before it gets better. I don't lose hope. I believe there is always a way to get it right and to mend what's been broken. I don't believe anything is impossible. I can't. And I believe that man is just, there's people on this earth who were put here predestined to be guiders, leaders in this time, the coming storm. And we see the same thing, and it's happening. And I can't explain it. Like I said, it seems like the richest among us are blind. It seems like something is guiding their hand that is beyond their control. And some of us are gifted, I think, with the sight of, foresight to see the storm coming. And we're having a calling right now to prepare ourselves for the collapse of everything, because there's going to be good people out here who didn't ask to be damned to this earth and hell. And the people of light and good and charity are going to have to rise up to protect those against the growing darkness. And I don't know how else to explain it to people. It terrifies me, to be honest with you. It literally shakes me to my core that things that I saw when I was young, almost prophetically, are coming to pass.
God will bear witness out of the mouths of two or more witnesses.
Yeah.
God will, when he teaches you something, he'll also turn right around and through somebody, sometime a perfect stranger, sometime through his word, sometime it'll be through a prophet, and he'll come up and he'll say what God's been dealing with you about in your prayer closet. He'll confirm him. God don't need no help. He'll confirm himself.
Yeah.
But this, you're absolutely right. There's just no way we could have ever fathomed what's coming.
Yeah.
And there, as far as the fear goes, I understand. I actually came to a place in my relationship with God where I understood exactly what Eve went through in the garden when Satan came in and said, "Did God really say?" See, I understood that. Did God really say this? For these past 20 years, did God really talk about this coming storm? Because, see, the hardest thing about this is dying to ourselves. God told me that we're coming into a time that unless we trust on his strength and unless we trust on his guidance,
Yeah.
we'll not endure what's coming. And the Bible says those who will endure to the end, the same shall be saved.
Yeah.
Apart from God giving us the strength and God giving us the wisdom and leading us, we are going to be deceived in what's coming.
This may sound insane to some people, but I have, through either American society, my life, the world around me, whatever, I have been bred to be fearless and not have fear anymore. Because, first of all, I can't control whatever happens to me, right? If it's predetermination or just bad luck, whatever, I can't stop it. So why be afraid? Why be afraid of something that's going to happen to me anyway? We're all going to die. You can live 100 years and you're going to die. I guess, and that might be the older you get, the more you realize death comes for us all. When you're younger, you think it's going to last forever, right? The party's going to last. We're going to have a good time. I'm invincible. But when you get older, you start to realize you don't get up as fast in the morning. You don't, you feel things a lot differently. So you realize that death comes for us all. And, I'm not proficient in the Bible, but as the old saying goes, or the old Bible verse, yea, through I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, right? Why should I have fear? Because, the darkness I feel is kept at bay by karma, whatever you may want to call it. I bless people when I have something. Like if I have extra cigarettes, I give somebody a smoke. If I have extra food, I give somebody a food. If I have extra clothes, I will take the shirt off my back and clothe these people if I have to, because I realize here in Gastonia, we've been abandoned to die, literally. And one of the examples is this water spigot right there. We were getting water during the summer. It was hot, brutally hot out here. Some of these elderly people couldn't walk. They couldn't go anywhere. So we got water. We got stuff to wet our clothes so we could survive, because there was nowhere we could go. And they eventually decided to put a lock on. And sometimes I see actions, man, and I mean, it's not against the whole church, but it is against some, as they claim the good of God, and then they turn around and do things like that, deny man water in the desert. And it breaks my heart, because it's like, what God are you worshiping? What God are we teaching to people? Honestly. Like, food is okay, right? But what these people need is sustainable shelter. They need chances to rebuild. It takes time. And that's just like with the Salvation Army. They give you a timeline that just, you can't meet it, no matter what you do. And that's the thing, man, is I don't have any fear because of things like that, because I realize I'm the odd man out with the cops, with the churches, with everything. I don't know how to explain to people. Do you know what it's like to walk down the street and be seen as garbage, human garbage? To where if you do one wrong move, if you have a bad day and you're like, I'm done with this, and you start screaming and crying, the cops show up and then they won't understand. And then they're like, we need you to leave the property, or we're going to tase you and beat you, potentially. Because we live in a nation where people have gotten killed on the streets, man, for doing nothing. So I got, these cops and other people act like the nation isn't what it is. Like they're, like you said, blind or deceived. I think we're living in deception right now because people are openly, willingly ignorant to everything around them. I can't explain it. They see the evidence, they see things going on, and they turn a blind eye because
it's not them.
It's not them, but they got their temporary rewards, like these nice cars. These people got that in exchange for their souls, their consciousness. And I don't understand how, I mean, with me, I understand because it's like, okay, I'm an able-bodied person, but for elderly people, they'll see an old man walking down the street with a walker, for God's sakes, and they'll turn a blind eye to this old man alone, or a woman dying in the street. And I'm like, what is this nation become? What have we become, man?
God showed me two things. This is back when they were over on Marietta, and I was out there ministering, telling people, God loves you, and trying to hug necks, shake hands, that kind of way. Because I think his stuff is the easiest thing God can get out of you. What he wants out of you is your time.
Yeah.
And but what happened is I seen this woman get out of a car and handed out 2 pizzas to the homeless, and she got back in her car. And I saw deception. They thought by taking the pizza out of the car and handing the pizza to feed somebody, they were doing God's work.
Yeah.
And never, not one time, said nothing to nobody. And I said, Lord, help me not be deceived. And then I sat there and I watched again. I'm over here at the Faith, Hope, and Love. I opened the showers. I opened the laundry room. Feed every day. We give you tents and the whole 9 yards. You just go in, get everything you could possibly want, the comforts of home. And the very thing, except our hearts are changed, there's no appreciation for nothing. In other words, I watched everything for a year supplied, and what came out of that is where the church intended to do a good work, only created a bondage. Because nobody wanted to leave. Nobody wanted to change. Nobody wanted to quit the drugs. Nobody wanted to quit the drinking.
Yeah.
Through a good work, unintentionally, created a bondage.
Yeah, well, I mean, there has to be stepping stones to, and I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe this is just my experience out here and everything else. And this may sound brutal, but it's the truth. You learn real quick that not everybody's going to make it off the boat. You understand? Not everybody's going to be out of this. They're not going to make it out because they get used to it. Like a trained animal, they get used to the sandwiches. They get used to what gets them by. And then by the end of it all, man, like they become like performing seals.
The lifestyle becomes addictive.
Yeah, and it's like I said, I mean, especially when you mix in drugs and alcohol and chaos and carnage and, people don't understand the mix that comes out into the street. You got everything from schizophrenic, sociopaths, psychopaths. You got people who are schizophrenic, drug addicted, out of prison, out of everything. Like you got double murders, triple murderers. You got, pedophiles. You got rapists. You got everything. Everything gets pushed into the street. That's the thing that frustrates me and upsets me is a nursing home will push out old people. They'll throw them out in the street if they can't pay, literally to die. But that happens with asylums. That happens with everything, man. And then, you can't really get upset with the cops to some degree because they have to be like a caregiver. They have to be a nurse. They have to be a psychologist. They're having to do things well outside the parameters of police work now, man. Like the gentleman here yesterday who got tased. He's not in his right mind. he's 6'3" and 375 pounds of a person who is not in reality anymore. And thank God they used restraint to tase him, even though he attacked them and didn't shoot him to death, because they would have been well within their rights to kill the man because he's on a rampage. But it's not him. I know him as a person. He's a good man. But he mentally did not get his medicine on time. He didn't get his antipsychotics, whatever may be happening. And it's a situation that just didn't, you had no warning. He was just sitting there. And actually, right before that happened, I talked to him. And he said, you didn't have to say that about God. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I ain't said nothing to you. He got up and he was about to storm me until he realized who I was. And he dead stopped and he said, I'm having a bad day. That was the last thing I said to him or talked to him about before 10 minutes later, he was getting tased in this parking lot. It's madness, man. I mean, like I said, it's madness. And Gaston County expects this problem to solve itself. It's never going to solve itself. And the thing I have to say too is no offense to these churches, there's God knows how many churches in this town, but only 2 shelters. Well, 1 now. And you can't get into there after a year. If you get kicked out of Salvation Army or you have to leave, regardless, you can't come back for a year, an entire year.
What would your advice be to those who maybe possibly are fixing to come into the street? What would your advice be to the young folk?
Don't freak out. Don't panic. Okay? Just like with prison, there's a lot of stigma, a lot of hearsay, a lot of legend, a lot of things that aren't true about the streets. Depending on who you are, I'm going to be honest with you right now. If you are a young woman and you are single, get to someplace safe, fast, before nightfall. And make sure you have a weapon on you, a razor, a knife, something. You do not, and be aware of don't let anyone lead you somewhere that you don't want to go. If somebody's like, I got a tent you can come stay at, don't go. Do it by yourself. If you're a young man, kind of the same difference, but, take your time, make it past the first night, then find resources. Go to every aid organization you can, every church, get all the information you can, and network. And do not, if you're in Gaston County, count on the Salvation Army or anybody else to get you out of this situation quickly. You are in this for a long haul. And always be aware of the people you're talking to. And the good people you meet, try to group up with them, try to stick with them. And the problem with a lot of younger people, especially nowadays, is they come out here and they don't have a way of discerning when somebody's being deceptive or when somebody's trying to lead them down a bad path. And they just trust everybody. Don't trust anyone. But, start to learn how to read people, their actions, their motives, what they're saying. If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. If I come up to you and say, hey, man, I got a pile of gold over here. You want to come see it? And you go into the woods, be aware of where you're at and what's surrounding you. Always have an escape plan. If you go somewhere, know how to get out fast.